The Cutie Mark Chronicles has given us so much background information on the main six. But even more than that, we have also been given some excellent material for theories, headcanons, and fanfictions, all from this one episode. I gotta hand it to M.A. Larson here. He managed to pack so much information into one episode, and yet it doesn't feel like we are in the middle of a history lesson. They could have very easily put all these stories into their own episodes. There is enough of a basic story to work with from each of the main six for all of them to get their own origin episode. But I honestly think that putting all these stories into one episode came out rather nicely. We got quite a bit of information for the main six, but not so much that we aren't able to expand upon it in our own way. The episode begins with the CMC attempting some ziplining. And when that fails, Scootaloo wonders where they might be able to find a cannon. Scootaloo certainly has a need to do dangerous stunts, as we have seen more than once before. I have to wonder if she had that aspect to her personality even before she began idolizing Rainbow Dash. Applebloom comes up with the idea of asking the ponies around town about how they got their cutie marks, and of course Scootaloo wants to find her idol, as her story would most likely be the coolest. But they end up bumping into Applejack instead. Now, I've already mentioned my thoughts about Applejack's past, and watching this episode again, I still say that they hold up pretty well. The fact that Applejack is going off to be with her relatives in Manhattan is quite a bit of a life-changing experience, and both Big Mac and Granny Smith are there to see her off. But the fact that her parents are not still suggests to me that they were already out of the picture even when Applejack was this young. And if that is indeed the case, then there must also have been a very, very young Applebloom on the farm as well at this point. So if we can guess that Applejack is anywhere between 7 to 10 years old in this flashback, then she would be at most 7 to 10 years older than Applebloom. And depending on how old you believe Applebloom is now, that would give a fairly good idea on how old Applejack is now. I also find it admirable that Applejack discovers her cutie mark when she decides that her place is back with her family at Sweet Apple Acres. Wouldn't surprise me if the 3 apples on her flank also represented the 3 members of her family that needed her to be there for them. That would actually earn even more of my respect for her character. Next up, we have Fluttershy's story, which almost immediately shows us just how much pressure there is on a young Pegasus to learn how to fly. And we also see just how deeply this runs in the next season during Hurricane Fluttershy. I still have to wonder if it really is the entirety of Pegasi society that puts pressure on flying, and not just the children. I've also noticed that Fluttershy actually seems a bit bigger than Rainbow Dash here. Now, it could be that Fluttershy is just maturing faster than Rainbow, but it still suggests that Fluttershy is likely a little bit older than Rainbow Dash. Now, when Fluttershy reaches the ground, she states that she had never been down there before. Is it normal for Pegasi not to bring their children down out of the clouds until they are old enough to fly on their own? That may be possible. Except that we see young Pegasi like Scootaloo are down on the ground, and we know that she is not able to fly on her own yet. So, is Fluttershy the exception here? Or could it be that Scootaloo is the exception? I also noticed that Fluttershy is actually quite quickly able to fly on her own with little trouble right after she found the wonders of being down on the ground. Seems to me that when Fluttershy was feeling happy and not even thinking about her own lack of self-confidence, that flying had come quite naturally to her. In the next scene, we notice that Rarity's story starts with her already doing what she loves, designing costumes for others. But since Rarity is always on the lookout for something truly unique, she is never quite satisfied with her creations. She begins to feel down on herself when her horn suddenly activates and starts dragging her across the landscape. I don't know how far she had traveled, but it must have taken her at least one night to reach her destination, so that really does seem like quite the distance. I'm also rather curious about unicorn magic here. Rarity says that unicorn magic doesn't happen without a reason, so I have to wonder just how often this sort of thing happens when a unicorn discovers her special talent. Will this sort of thing happen when Sweetie Belle finally discovers her talent? Another thing I'd like to note here is the moment when Rarity gets her cutie mark. It wasn't when she discovered the gems. It wasn't when she had put them on the costumes. She acquired her Cutie Mark at the moment when the crowd was in awe over the beauty that Rarity had created, which adds a little more depth to Rarity's passion, as her desire to create is about spreading beauty to others. One other little thing I'd like to note here is that there is an oddly colored Applejack and Pinkie Pie in the performance here. When we come to Twilight's story, we can immediately see just how driven she is to learn everything there is about magic. But what makes this scene interesting is the fact that the entrance exam includes getting a dragon egg to hatch. Now, I really have to wonder, did every filly and colt have this same exam? Were there other eggs being hatched? Spike seems to be the only dragon living among pony kind. And considering that ponies know next to nothing about dragons suggests that Spike was the first and only one of his kind to be hatched by a pony. Which raises a very interesting question. Why is this part of the entrance exam? Was Celestia intentionally looking for a young pony who could show such overwhelming potential at an early age? To me, this suggests that Celestia was waiting for a pony like Twilight Sparkle, someone who could hatch the egg and become Celestia's personal student. Whether Celestia knew that this sort of thing would happen, or if she was just hoping that this sort of thing would happen, I really don't know, but it still leaves me wondering. One other thing I'd like to point out here is Twilight's Cutie Mark. If you look closely at this scene, you may notice that she did not get her Cutie Mark when she had that burst of magical energy. Her Cutie Mark appeared right after she accepted Celestia's offer to become her personal student. So, what does that tell us? Could it be that Twilight's natural gift with magic is not what sparked her Cutie Mark? Could it be that it only appeared when she began fulfilling her destiny to one day becoming an Alicorn princess? It just might be possible. Also, this is just plain adorable.
Are you okay?
Yes.
Coming now to Pinkie Pie's history, we see that her life was about as dull as it could be. No talking, no smiling, just rocks. I find it admirable that when Pinkie discovers what joy feels like, that her first thought is how to spread that joy to others. And we can see that her Cutie Mark appears at the moment when others do feel that joy. I'm really hoping that we will be delving more into Pinkie Pie's family in the future, as I can see a lot of possibilities for stories here. I also noticed that the music that is playing at Pinkie's party also happens to be the same music that got the Parasprites to follow Pinkie into the Everfree Forest. Makes me wonder if sometime after this point there happened to be a Parasprite infestation near the farm and Pinkie had discovered completely by accident that they are drawn to that kind of music. Might help explain why Pinkie is the only one in Ponyville who knew what a Parasprite was and how to get rid of them. Finally, we come to the last of the Cutie Mark stories for the main 6. It is good to see that Rainbow had the desire to defend Fluttershy's honor even at such a young age. But what I find most interesting about her story is that she talks about how all the other Pegasi had thought that a sonic rainboom was only a legend. Makes me rather curious as to who pulled off the very first sonic rainboom, and how long it has been since any other Pegasi had managed it. I really like how this story had managed to connect all of the main 6 long before they had developed their bonds of friendship. And I believe there is enough material here for each of the main 6 to have had their own episode on how they had gotten their Cutie Marks. But when I thought about it, I honestly believe that it turned out better to have all their stories in this one episode. It gave us just enough information to understand how it happened, but still left quite a bit open for us to fill in the gaps. As you can already tell, my mind was buzzing with all sorts of what-if concepts when I was watching the Cutie Mark Chronicles. And that made it all the more enjoyable when I was re-watching this episode. But now I would like to hear from each of you. I've gone through quite a few theories and headcanons in this review, and I want to hear your opinions on all of them. Whether they be about the ages of the main 6, or about how there might be some hidden depth to their Cutie Marks, or even how some of these ideas might connect to other episodes. I rather enjoy finding these little tidbits that show some added depth to the stories in MLP. Whether it was intended by the writers or not, it's still a lot of fun. Until next time, I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.